Do you guys love me? Do you like my podcast? If that's the case, I encourage you to head on over to Spotify or Apple Podcasts and give me a little rating. Give me a little review. Put 5 stars down if that's what you're feeling, if that's what's true to your heart. 1 star if you absolutely hate my guts and want me to stop talking. But you should give me some ratings because I think that would make my heart happy. I've got like 30 reviews on Spotify right now, and I see you guys out there. There's like thousands of you listening to the podcast, and a measly, meager little 30 reviews. I think we can up those numbers. And I'm not all about the numbers, but I don't know. It would make me kind of happy. Anyways, I'm here this week to chat a little bit about my first ever work trip that I took. Little solo episode, no guest today. I just want to sit down and chat about this incredible experience that I got to have going on my first work trip. And I keep saying work trip because I thought it was so cool that I was traveling for, you could say, for business, I guess. I remember being in physical therapy school and having this realization that I'm just never really going to travel for work unless I do travel physical therapy or kind of get out of the practitioner role and do something else with my physical therapy degree. I'm not going to be traveling for work, and that's okay. I like to travel. I like to see new things. I like to get outside my state lines, try new cuisines, talk to people. It's just what I like to do. I've always felt that way. Like I only get one opportunity to be on earth. I would like to see a lot of it. Anyways, I had basically come to accept the fact that I was not going to be traveling for my job anytime soon. And if you guys have been following along at any capacity, you might know by now my job situation has changed. I work for myself now. And with that comes some opportunities over the past year that have led me to this work trip. I'm going to stop calling it a work trip now. It was a Jane Ambassadors live event. So let me backtrack a little bit. Jane is the clinical management software that I use in my clinic to basically do everything other than treat the patient. So I use it for scheduling, I use it for payment processing, billing, running reports, automated emails, paperwork, you name it. Jane is pretty much the entire structure of my clinic. And I signed up with them about a little over a year ago. And I was at my wit's end prior to signing up with them. I was documenting, I think on a private Google Workspace area. I was taking people's payments manually with the Square app that would plug into my phone, but a lot of times it didn't work. And so it was just very awkward for me. I had this template downloaded on Excel that I used to frame my documentation. I would schedule people. I tried to schedule them on Google Calendar, but a lot of times it would just be over text. And so I'd have to keep up with text chains and figure out what my schedule was going to look like. It was all over the place. And me being a cheap ass, I was like, I'm not buying an EMR. I'm not buying a clinical management software for like, I think it was $39 a month. I was like, I can't afford that. I'm just gonna rough it. Anyways, I got really fed up with that pretty quickly, and I decided to use Jane. I had heard about it from other physical therapists that were like mentors to me, and they're like, Roni, why are you wasting your time? Just please go get Jane. So I did. And I was quickly obsessed. I was amazed at how smooth my practice ran and how much more professional I felt. And so around that same time, I was also gaining more traction on social media to the point where I was like, okay, I wonder if I could make this work for both of us because I'm shouting about Jane from the rooftops and I kind of want to, I guess not work for them, but I want to see if this could be a collaborative relationship. So I reached out to Jane corporate and I said, hey guys, I don't even know if I knew they had an ambassador program. I just said, I love the work you're doing. You've transformed my clinical practice already, and I'm only a month into using Jane. Maybe I think it was maybe 2 months in, and I would just love to work with you guys. And so I ended up becoming an ambassador for them, and now I've been an ambassador for almost a year. And so what does that entail, you might ask? What does an ambassador even mean? So many companies have ambassador programs. What is that? Like you get a discount code, you get some swag, what is it? Well, Yes, it is that, but it's also so much more. It's like a community of people coming from all kinds of different practices. So, physical therapists, chiropractors, massage therapists, mental health therapists, you name it. A lot of those people are on Jane and then are ambassadors for Jane. And so I post about them every month. I educate the public on all the good work they're doing. I just was on a webinar talking to over 1,100 people about Jane and just kind of serving in my ambassadorship in that way. Anyways, I'm giving all you this backstory so that you can understand that part of the program for the ambassadors was the opportunity to go to this live event. Now, actually, when I signed up to become an ambassador and was initiated into the program, I had no idea that this was even a thing. But when I got the email back in October, November of last year saying, "Hey, ambassadors, we can't wait to meet everybody in person at this live event," I was like, shut the front door. A work trip. It's a work trip. And I got so excited. So I say the word work. It really, to me, was an opportunity to just get to meet all of these people that I had seen online, communicated with via Zoom or Google Meet or whatever, and finally get to just collaborate in person and have good chats and learn a little bit more about Jane. Also, I would just like to say a little side note disclaimer. This is not a Jane ad. The Jane ambassador team has no idea that I'm even posting this podcast episode. I just was thinking of subjects that I wanted to talk on before I have more guests on, just for some solo episodes. And I just really wanted to share this experience because for me, as a business owner and just bringing you along on my journey, this was a really big moment for me. So we're just going to get into it a little bit. 50 ambassadors got to go to Palm Springs, California this past weekend. And well, I guess by the time this episode comes out, it'll be a couple of weeks ago. And I got to bring my husband along for the ride, although he did not, he didn't get to be part of really any of the events. I had a buddy pass on Delta and it was about to expire. And I was like, when are we going to go to California again? I've never been to California. You've only been once. Like, get on the plane, buddy. Let's go. You can go lay by the pool while I'm doing stuff. And that's exactly what he did. So 50 ambassadors plus the team that runs the ambassador program at a resort in Palm Springs, California, doing all the fun things. There were meet and greets, great meals, happy hours, workshops, content strategy, planning, and great keynote speakers. We got to hear from the co-founders of Jane. They actually got up on stage and talked to everybody just about the origin story of Jane and answered all of our questions. And I don't know, I think I went into the weekend having no expectations, not low expectations, but just no expectations. I didn't really know what we were doing, what was to be expected of us. And I walked away feeling like I learned so much. I took so much away. I got inspired by all these other business owners that are using Jane and that are ambassadors and are implementing things in their practice that I haven't been doing. And I wasn't expecting that. I wasn't expecting to have learned so much. I got home and I was like, I think I need to take notes. I want to remember all of this and just make the most out of it. One of the best parts was just getting to meet the people that brought me on in the very beginning. You you know how it is when you virtually meet somebody and maybe you guys don't. Maybe you always work with people in person, but when you have a virtual, I guess, coworker, they start to feel like somebody that you actually know, but you've never laid eyes on them in person. So getting to meet these hardworking, really cool people in person was kind of surreal. It was better than expected. I was like, "Oh my gosh, I feel like I have all these Canadian friends." Oh, and most of all of Jane, I think most all of Jane, their employees are Canada-based. So that was just a plus because I've never been to Canada, but now I really wanna go. Their accents are cute and they're really just like fun, good-hearted people. So, it was just a great time from start to finish. I will say one downside is when you're out of the clinic for, I think I took 5 days off of treating patients, and you're the only physical therapist that treats patients at that location, AKA me at Rehab with Roni, you do start to feel a little behind. And there's a slight underlying layer of anxiety sort of just coating the background of every situation towards the end of the trip, or I guess like sort of in the middle. I had 2 free days before the next part of the Jane retreat, which I'll talk about in a second, but I remember feeling a little overwhelmed, like there's nothing I can do. I can't be back in Tennessee to run my clinic. I just have to be fully present here, and struggling with that a little bit because I wanna be in 75 places at once. And I wanted to make the most of the fact that I was on this trip, but I also wanted to get back and hit the ground running and implement all these things that I've learned. And I just had to learn to take a breather, enjoy the fact that I'm across the country. I flew 5 hours to get here and just bask in the glory of it all, you know? But it's easier said than done. So I think a lot of other business owners or even just people in general that work really hard and then go do something to try and enjoy themselves might have a hard time coming down off of the work mindset and just leveling out and being present and trying to enjoy the small moments. But I at least recognized that and was able to kind of reel it back in and be like, "Okay, Ronnie, just go hike this mountain because you're here and don't worry about the fact that you're not treating any patients until Friday. It's not that big of a deal. Nobody cares. We're just on a floating rock in space. We're all just a bunch of cells." Okay. Anyways, I digress. One of the greatest parts of this trip was the fact that the Jane Ambassador team asked some of us to stay a little bit longer, extend our trip, and be present for the entire Jane staff retreat. So we've got the ambassador part, we've got like a 2-day break where I got to celebrate my 2-year wedding anniversary with my husband. We kind of treated it like a baby moon. We got to go on a sky lift up a mountain, just doing fun stuff like that, eating great food. And then I think Jane has 650 something employees. 400 plus of those employees were in Palm Springs by the middle of the week. And the few ambassadors that were asked to stay behind and be part of the staff retreat were part of a customer panel. They had asked us a few months ago, "Hey, do you guys mind staying? You can have some free days in Palm Springs, and then you'll be expected to show up for this day, and we'll create some content, we'll have some meetings, and then you'll be part of the customer panel where basically we'll have prepared questions for you. And you, as customers of Jane, will be able to just talk on your experiences." And me, in my mind, I'm like, first of all, hell yeah, I'll extend my trip. You guys know me. I love to travel, more time to explore. Love that idea. Number two, excited to meet other staff members of Jane because if you can't tell by now, I'm a big fan of the company. And I was just excited to meet more coworkers. They're not my coworkers. I'm not a Janer, but they felt like friends. And so I was pumped for that. But this is where it gets kind of funny. I had read through the briefs. I understood the concept of what this customer panel was going to look like. I just don't think I understood the magnitude and the scale of how big this event was going to be. In my mind, I had this picture of a customer panel being kind of like a round table discussion where, you know, we're kind of going back and forth and there's small groups and then we break off. No, I show up with the 4 other ambassadors to this customer panel, and we walk into these big doors, and there's this ginormous ballroom, huge chandeliers, 450 people, a stage with fancy chairs sitting up there. I was picturing like a fold-out chair and a round plastic table. I don't know why. Microphones, like real microphones sitting on the chairs for us to hold in our hands and speak into and stare out at the crowd. And by gosh, I was a little unprepared for that. And that's on me. I just think I didn't understand how big this retreat was going to be. So it's kind of funny. It's okay. One thing that might surprise people, and I think it's a little surprising because I have a podcast and I also get online and talk to like 100,000 people on my stories. I used to be really afraid of public speaking. And I think that fear is definitely still deep seated within me, but I'm starting to learn tactics to get over it. I'm serious though. I remember giving a speech at my best friend's wedding. This was 3 years ago, and it's 150 people in the room. I had months to prepare this speech, and I did okay. I did fine, but I felt my heart beating out of my chest. My voice got super low. I was like, "Hello, everybody. I'm Ronnie." And it was not an enjoyable experience for me. I mean, love her, loved the speech, but it was just terrifying. Anyways, it was cool to fast forward 3 years and be sitting on that stage and feel really comfortable in my own shoes and also confident about the subject matters at hand. I think that's what it comes down to. If you're afraid of public speaking, sure, the crowd piece is a little scary, but what's scarier is not knowing what the hell you're talking about and sounding like an idiot or losing people because of it. And sitting up there with those other ambassadors, other practice owners who have great things to say and just beautiful minds to work off of, I felt like I knew exactly what to say and I felt comfortable. And that was probably the first time I felt comfortable talking in front of a crowd and also the biggest crowd I've ever talked in front of ever, which is cool. If it had just been me up there being a keynote speaker or being like, "Hey guys, I'm Ronnie and I'm here to talk to you about X, Y, and Z," probably would have been a different caliber of nervousness, but it was really great. I think it was like this out of body experience. I remember sitting there and I remember thinking, I'm just so honored to be here right now. I was feeling a little, I guess I looked at myself as maybe a little less qualified to be there than the other people. The other ambassadors have been owning their own practices, running other companies for at minimum, I think 10 years, maximum 25, maybe more. And then here's like little old rehab with Ronnie, company of one. Hi, I've been operating for 1 year and I have like a little podcast that I do and follow me on Instagram for my exercise videos. I just felt briefly a little underqualified. But then I remembered, no, no, no. They asked me to be here for a reason. I am a Jane customer, I am an advocate, and I know what I'm talking about. But it was I just felt honored, like a little underqualified, but then honored to be there and be sitting next to these people that have so much more knowledge than me and have learned so much. It was just such a cool experience through and through from start to finish. But I think that roundtable discussion with those other business owners was just the highlight of the entire trip. Also celebrating my anniversary. Love you, Adam. I think one of the biggest takeaways now that I'm sitting here reflecting on this trip in its entirety is the older I get, the less I know. And that really applies to being a business owner. As you guys know, I've just been doing this for a short while, just a small percentage of my life. But I feel like I have the hang of things sometimes, you know? I'm like bopping around town. I'm like, yeah, I'm having a great time. I love my life. And that is true, but there's so much that I still need to learn. And it's kind of humbling to be surrounded by other people that have been doing it for way longer than you and have all these great ideas and you can kind of bounce off each other and learn from each other. All in all, in closing, it was a fantastic trip from start to finish. Only downsides were that freaking time change. I don't know about you guys, but just a 3-hour time change from East Coast to West hit me harder than if I go to Europe or to China. It was just enough time to where you're super thrown off, but you feel like you shouldn't be. So that wasn't cool. But that's besides the point. My first ever work trip was so memorable. I could go on, but I think I've covered all the main points. And I guess this just goes to show that if you're out there and you think that your life trajectory and your job or your career is going to lead you down one path on the straight and narrow and it's never going to veer any other direction, even though you might want it to, well, I am living, breathing proof that it can. You can go on a work trip. And now I want to go on more work trips. Where should I go next? I got to figure out another reason to travel for Rehab with Ronnie, which doesn't make tons of sense because I'm a local business, but if we put our brains together, we could figure something out. I appreciate you guys for listening. I appreciate you for writing me super kind reviews if you feel so inclined. And I look forward to chatting with you next week.